So, Unbound at this point is like a week away. Honestly, I'm freaking out. Unbound is my A event for the year. So I've put a lot of time and effort into preparing for it. And it's interesting because the more time and effort I put into it, the more anxiety I feel about actually doing it. Because if something goes wrong, or if I get a bad result, then it means that all that work, that extra work, it might be for nothing, which is really scary. But I think the thing that is going to help calm my nerves is formulating a good plan. Let's have a little strategy meeting. I've started the Unbound 200 4 times now. I've finished 3 times. I don't claim to be that smart. I'm probably not that smart, but I can definitely speak with a little bit of confidence, hopefully enough confidence to convince myself that what I'm doing is a good idea. Let's talk about the course a little bit. It is a sort of new course at 207 miles. What they're doing is they're combining some of the south course with some of the north course. But the big change that really caught my attention is there's gonna be 3 checkpoints this year. Checkpoint 1 is at mile 42, downtown Madison. Checkpoint 2 is at mile 100.3 at Matfield Green. Checkpoint 3 is at mile 160 at Council Grove. And it provides a lot more options for riders to think about how they're gonna resupply. If you're riding just to finish, I think stopping at every checkpoint is a great idea. For me, I think checkpoint 1 at mile 42 is a bit earlier than I actually want to stop. I talked with my coach about this and he feels the exact same way. I think a lot of riders are going to try to push all the way to checkpoint 2 without stopping. And that means I need to carry enough nutrition and hydration to make it 100 miles in one go. I'm definitely going to still leave a drop bag at the first checkpoint. I'm using a crew for hire this year. I'm using 3 feet. They're fantastic. I've used them the last 2 years. You drop off bags the day before at the expo. So I'm gonna definitely have a drop bag at checkpoint 1 still with some extra nutrition and probably a spare tire, just in case something goes wrong. Who knows, I could eject a bottle, I could flat. I think if you're super ambitious, potentially you could do the entire race as a one stop. A single stop at checkpoint 2 at mile 100 and then push all the way to the finish. That'd be pretty aggressive. It's on my mind. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to plan to stop at checkpoint 3 at mile 160, but I'm gonna let the events of the day and how I'm feeling dictate my decision. Who knows, I could have a miraculous day. Looking at the course profile, there is Texaco Hill. It comes at mile 64, and it is the biggest hill on the course. For a lot of riders, this will be like a launch pad to try and make a move. Definitely if you're a rider trying to win, but for everyone else, all the normies like me, Texaco Hill is gonna be about staying with the group you're trying to stay with or just surviving so that you don't burn too many matches. And I only really mention this because hills in general factor a lot into my strategy. I tend to think of myself as a relatively weaker climber. A strategy I use a lot on climbs, and I'm definitely gonna use on Texaco Hill, is I sag. I hit the bottom, usually somewhere around the front of a group, but I try to keep a really consistent sort of power and pace up the entire climb. A lot of stronger riders, they'll start coming around me. I'll start falling back, I'm sagging. As long as I can catch the tail end of a group as they crest the hill and I can sort of latch on as it starts going downhill, I can stay attached, and it saves a lot of energy, especially if you do this over and over during a 200-mile race. So riding 200 miles in one day is as much about pacing as it is about fitness or grit. The easiest way to have a terrible day, and I've found this out myself plenty of times in plenty of races, is to go out too hard. The key is to ride the entire race at a relatively even pace. And that's a really hard thing to judge, especially in a super long event, and especially if you've never ridden 200 miles before. How do you know how hard to go? When it comes to pacing strategies, there are two really successful strategies that I've used myself at Unbound. The first one, I basically call it going out too easy. It's stupidly simple. So this was my situation back in 2022. I had no idea if it was even possible for me to make it to the end of a 200-mile race. At the start of the race, the effort level I was putting out felt way too easy. It was like almost comical. It was almost embarrassing. I was just soft pedaling and everyone around me was just blowing past me. I essentially treated the start of the race like I was going out for an easy recovery ride. And while it like feels kind of too easy, that same exact effort by the end of the race can feel super hard. But because you've saved so much by not going out too hard early, you're able to keep doing it, and hopefully you're still going the same pace you were at the start. About 8 or 10 hours in, a lot of those riders that blew by me near the beginning, I started seeing them again, and I started catching them and passing them because they were just totally blown up. And this strategy was actually enough for me to achieve my goal that year, which was to beat the sun. But what if you want to go a bit faster? So my current Unbound PR I set in 2024, it was just under 12 hours. That year, finishing under 12 hours was my main goal. To like achieve this, I would have to go a lot harder than I had in the past. I would have to stick with faster riders. And because I had to stick with faster riders, this meant I didn't have the luxury of going too easy all day. But still, I didn't want to go too hard at any point and blow up. So to keep myself in check, I used a pacing strategy that I call setting a power window. My pacing plan was pretty simple. It was essentially to keep my power somewhere between 150 and 250 watts all day. That range essentially covers the entirety of my endurance zone, my zone 2, and then it goes up into about mid tempo for me. I'd keep an eye on my power while I was riding. It would be like the biggest field on my cycling computer, and I was consciously trying to stay between that upper and lower limit as much as possible, but I'd still give myself a little leeway, like I'd coast if I needed a little break, or if I was on a fast downhill. If I needed to do a quick punch above the upper limit to like crest a hill, or to stick with like a fast group, I would let myself do it as long as it wasn't too hard or too long and I was able to pretty easily recover from it. I was still trying to work with other riders as much as I could and hop in pace lines, but if that pace line or group was just going too hard for me, like I had to go out of my window above 250 watts to stay in the draft of the rider in front of me, I would basically pull the plug. I'd be like, screw this, and I would let the group go. Ultimately, just like the going out too easy strategy, the goal is to ride as evenly as you can across the whole day. I got an NP of 2:01, and I ended up getting the fastest finish time I've ever achieved. So my pacing plan this year is essentially a slightly modified version of the power window. And I'm calling this plan riding the edge. Essentially, I'm gonna try to ride the edge of blowing up. I'm still gonna have a power window that I'm gonna try and stay in. Since I'm a bit fitter this year than I was in 2024, I'm thinking about setting the range that I'm gonna try and stay in at like 170 to 270 watts. The big difference though is I'm gonna make a much bigger effort to try to stick with fast groups of riders. Instead of like letting groups go, the moment I have to ride too hard to stay in the draft, I'm gonna try to hang on. I think it's really unlikely that I can beat my current fastest finish time riding by myself. I think this year, if I have an absolutely perfect race, what's gonna happen is I am not gonna be alone for any part of it. That's really unlikely, but that would be the ideal scenario. I always have someone there to help me, to like work with, to draft off of, to take turns in the wind. I need to be willing to go a bit out of my comfort zone to hang on. Obviously, there is a bit of a gamble. You sometimes don't know if like you're in the right group. Maybe it is a group that's too strong and eventually they're gonna shell you and you're gonna end up dying in the wind by yourself. So I've been racing a lot in the last few years, and I've done 2 big races this year in my lead up to Unbound. My whole goal has been to sort of just play with the limit, to sort of figure out how hard I can actually go, how much I can go above my threshold, and how many times I can do it and still recover and feel like I can continue. And I still don't think I have a perfect grasp of that. A lot of it is just shooting from the hip. If I want to achieve a faster time, a better placing, whatever it is, I do have to gamble a bit, I think. Ultimately, the reason I've been training as much and as hard as I have been is because this is kind of the experience I want racing. I want to fight. I want to overcome the limits that I have set for myself or that I perceive for myself. Maybe that fight will lead to my biggest result or my biggest failure, but I don't know. We're just gonna have to see how it shakes out. Otherwise, when I'm by myself, if I end up by myself, I am gonna try to keep my power inside that window just to keep the momentum going and the pace sort of as even as I can throughout the whole day. So there is an environmental factor that will really mess up my pacing plan, and it will mess up everyone's pacing plan no matter what, and that is mud. The mud at Unbound, in my experience, is pretty heinous. Peanut butter mud. It is super sticky and it packs up your bike really quickly, clogging things up, slowing you down, or potentially causing a race-ending mechanical. In 2023, the notorious mud year, we had to hike like 4 or 5 miles through this section of mud, and I DNF'd that year because so much mud packed up in my bike that it broke a spoke on my wheel. That spoke went into my rear derailleur and ripped it off my frame. I've got a lot of unresolved trauma around this DNF. So this year, I have a pretty simple plan to deal with mud. Well, first off, I'm gonna stick this Hoot and Holler mud scraper from Wheels Manufacturing on my bike. So having a mud scraper is definitely gonna be useful, but the thing I'm really gonna focus on doing is the moment I see my bike clogging up, I'm getting off and I'm walking. I'm heading straight to the grass on the side of the road. I'm not even gonna try to ride it. I'm just gonna start walking. I think the big mistake I made in 2023 was just trying to ride through a lot of the worst mud sections. I was kind of overconfident because in 2022, there was also mud, and I successfully rode through all the mud sections while everyone else was walking, and I just got kind of cocky. I was like, oh, I'm gonna gain so much time on everyone by riding through all this. I also had a bike that had huge tire clearance and mud clearance, and I thought, there's no freaking way this thing is gonna clog. And what I learned is that peanut butter mud doesn't give a about how skilled you are or how much clearance your bike has. It's gonna mess you up. I mean, if the mud's not super bad, it's not super deep or sticky, ride through it, that's fine. But otherwise, if it starts packing, I'm just gonna play it safe. If it reaches that point, everyone's gonna lose time. There's no point in stressing about getting off and hiking. I'm just gonna walk, breathe, keep my bike intact, and just remember to keep fueling while you're walking. The last thing I'll say about this is that often the most nerve-wracking part of any race is just lining up at the start line or in the start chute. It is one of the toughest things to deal with sort of emotionally, and I have a really simple strategy for dealing with this, and it's box breathing. The first step is just to exhale and just try to exhale all of the air in your lungs out through your mouth. Just really slowly in about 4 seconds. And then I hold. And then I inhale through my nose as slowly and deeply as I can for another 4 seconds. And then I hold for another 4 seconds. And then I repeat this. It's this 4, 4, 4, 4. That's the box. It really helps me slow down my heart rate. I use it at the start of like every race. If you see me at the start line and I'm just sitting like bolt upright, straddling my bike, just going, that's what I'm doing. I'm calming myself the down. And usually it only takes a few minutes of doing that. Like it's not that long, but I'll feel relaxed. Often the moment you start moving, all of the nerves and everything, they melt away. That's essentially my plan for Unbound this year. Hopefully things work out, who knows? I've said it before, Unbound is a big, nasty beast. Ton of things can go wrong. I'm definitely visualizing all of the horrible things that could go wrong and how I'm gonna deal with it. If you are going to Unbound and you're gonna be in Emporia before the race and you need a pep talk, a little strategy meeting, definitely come by the Lightspeed or the Obed booth. If I'm not there, definitely the Obed and Lightspeed guys, they're great guys to talk with. And also, like I said in my last video, come by the Obed booth and get your free copy of Spoke and Terrain magazine. If you're not gonna be in Unbound, get a free digital copy because, like I said, I'm super proud of this magazine. It's got some great stories about people overcoming their doubts and doing big, amazing things. If you're racing this year, whether it's Unbound or any other bike race, I hope you achieve all of your goals. Good luck. I'll see you on the next one.